Hello everybody, welcome to Snyder's Inc. How y'all doing? It's time for another Mr. Ballen reaction video, and today, we're continuing top 3 photos with disturbing backstories. We got part 5 here. Part 5. Now what I need y'all to do is hit the like button and the subscribe button. That's what I need y'all to do right now. Alright? I want y'all to do that right now. I'm going to sit here and wait. I will wait all day until you do it, alright? So I need y'all to do it. Hit the button. Hit the goddamn button. Hit it! Hit the button! Good. Glad you hit. If you see me checking my, looking over here, I just keep checking my phone for plans for later today. But let's get right into this. Again, this is top 3 photos with disturbing backstories, part 5. Let's get into this. Are you guys ready? Of course you're ready. Not even gonna ask, just of course you're ready. Let's go.
Today, I'm going to share with you 3 progressively more disturbing stories.
That was weird.
And at the end of each of them, I'm going to share with you the picture that is famously associated with them. But before I get into today's stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right channel, because that's all I do, and I upload 3, 4, even 5 times every week.
Now about 1 or 2, but the things he does are really good.
So if that's of interest to you, please convince the like button to go camping on their own on Mount Shasta. Also, please subscribe to this channel and turn on all...
What the goddamn hell is Mount Shasta? I don't know what that is. I don't get the joke of that one.
Notifications so you don't miss any of my weekly uploads. Alright, let's get into today's stories. In 1970, 14-year-old Keith Sapsford was living in Sydney, Australia with his parents, and he was desperate to travel the world. His parents wanted him to be able to travel, they just lacked the resources to be able to afford that kind of thing. However, they were able to pull a little bit of cash, and the 3 of them did go on a nice European vacation that his parents were hoping would kind of calm down his desires to want to travel.
Yeah, I can understand that. I have a thing of wanting to travel places, but when you don't get money and you're in the middle of a pandemic, you can't really travel. But I would like to travel different places too.
Travel all the time. They thought this would be, a taste before he got older and he could go travel as much as he wanted. But when he came back from that vacation, it really had the opposite effect. It was like Keith had experienced the life that he so desperately wanted, and now he's home and it's like that life has been taken from him. Following that vacation, Keith began trying to run away from home. Not because he didn't want to be around his parents, but just because he saw it as his only way to, see the world. But every time he would run away,
this thought process in his head is the most weirdest thing ever, where if he is not traveling and that, he's now just living a regular life, and it just makes him so annoyed that he's having to live this regular life. Like, dude, you can't travel forever.
His parents would quickly find him and bring him back home. Their concern for their son would only grow, though, because he would find ways to sneak away and be gone for longer and longer stretches of time, and they're thinking it's only a matter of time before he really gets hurt. In an effort to save their son, they ended up enrolling him in this very strict boarding school that was for boys with behavioral problems, and they were hoping that the staff at the school was going to be able to kind of calm their son down and keep him from trying to run away all the time. But unfortunately, the school really had the opposite effect, because the school, in a sense, was like a prison. You weren't allowed to leave. And so immediately, Keith, when he gets there, he's looking for ways to escape this boarding school. And 2 weeks after arriving, he would be successful. He would elude the staff and he would escape. 3 days after he had escaped this boarding school, he found his way to the Sydney airport. Now, this is the 1970s, and it was far easier to get into an airport than it would be today, where there's lots of security. There wasn't much of that at the time that Keith was at the airport, and so...
Why? Why back in the day did no one give a damn about getting someone making sure your airport not secured? What the hell?
Keith walked across the tarmac to a plane that was bound for Tokyo, and he climbed inside the wheel well. He tucked himself in there and he waited for takeoff. A photographer named John Gilpin happened to be at the Sydney airport on the same day that Keith is now snuck into that wheel well, and he had a new lens for his camera that he was testing out. And at one point, he was just taking pictures of the tarmac, and he began taking pictures of a plane that was taking off, and it was the same plane that Keith had snuck into. And he takes pictures of it as it takes off, it goes up to altitude, and it flies away. And he just took a series of pictures of it, puts his camera away, doesn't think twice about it. A week later, John was looking through his photos, and he stopped when he saw this picture. John had inadvertently captured the final moments of Keith as he fell nearly 200 feet to his death. As soon as the pilot took off, the wheels were retracted, opening up that wheel well for a brief second, and there was nothing for Keith to hold on to, and he slipped out. But even if he had not fallen out, he almost certainly would have died from freezing temperatures and lack of oxygen at altitude.
The Guaranteed MasterCard from Capital One gets you a $300 to $7,000 credit limit and is great for...
I tried to pause it multiple times, but it wouldn't work. Wow, okay, so this boy who was trying to escape so badly and go travel places got on the wheel well area of this plane to go to Tokyo because that's where he knew it was going. But once the plane went to go attract its wheels, the place he was at slipped out for a second, and he just went out and fell 200 feet to his death. Oh my God. Man. That sucks so badly. But, like, I can't even be mad at him. I can't even be mad at the plane. Like, there's nothing to be mad except for that boy. That dude made a stupid choice. That was a stupid idea. That's all that was. That was a really stupid idea. I apologize for my distraction. Evil.
On April 1st, 1990, a police officer in Arizona was
Oh, but as I was saying, I don't know if I finished what I was saying, but I was saying, what a stupid choice that was again on that, because you're just expecting it to, you gotta be expecting yourself not to end well with that situation, right? Like, you can't honestly think that was gonna go well. I don't know what he was thinking. Just seemed like a dumb move to me.
driving on the highway when he saw a tractor trailer that was pulled over on the side of the road with its hazards on. And so he pulls over, he gets out, walks out to the driver's side door, and he looks up at the driver and says, "Hey, do you need any help?" And the driver is still sitting in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel. He's barely acknowledging the police officer. And he kind of looks down and shrugs and just says, "No, I'm okay." The police officer doesn't know what it was, but there was something off about this guy. He wasn't
Yeah, that would look weird to me if I saw a guy with his hazards on sitting on the side of the road and, like, not acknowledging someone, police officer. And he's like, no, I'm fine. He immediately questioned, I don't think you are.
doing anything wrong, but there was something off about him. He couldn't tell what it was. So he asked him again, "Are you sure that nothing is wrong?" And the driver, again, very sketchy, just says, no, nothing's wrong. And so the police officer, acting on a gut instinct, says, hey, can you step out? Do you mind if I talk to you outside of your vehicle? And so very reluctantly, the driver kind of slithers his way out of the vehicle, making sure that he doesn't fully open the door to kind of let the officer see what's going on inside his cab. He gets out and shuts the door, and the two start talking. Over the course of their conversation, where basically the officer is trying to figure out what you're doing here. Why are you parked on the side of the road with your hazards on? Why aren't you telling me what's going on? Why are you acting so strange? At some point, the officer just kind of had enough, and he said, hey, you know what? I'm going to need to search your vehicle. He opens up the door and goes inside, and there's nothing out of the ordinary in the front two seats. But when he looks into the back section where there was a sleeping compartment, because this is a big 18-wheeler, and there's like a little area in the back of the cab where these guys doing these long drives can sleep. When he looks into that section, he sees there's this woman with her mouth gagged, handcuffed, huddling in the corner of this sleeping section.
What the hell? This dude with the semi-tractor trailer truck thing just kidnapped a woman and tied her up in there? What the frick is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? What the hell? No. Oh no. Oh no. That's messed up. That is messed up.
Looking absolutely terrified. The officer immediately gets out and he grabs the guy and he puts him under arrest. As he's arresting him, the driver is saying, no, she wants to be here. She chose to be here. But the officer didn't buy it and he said, you're under arrest for kidnapping. The officer puts this guy in his cruiser and shuts the door, and then he calls for backup. When backup arrived, they were able to take the woman out. She was unhurt. She survived. But it would turn out that she was one of the very, very lucky few, because the driver was Robert Rhodes, aka the truck stop killer, who over the previous 20 years had killed over 50 women. He was one of
So this police officer, just off instinct, a gut instinct, a gut feeling, I'm having to investigate this guy more, caught a famous serial killer, the truck stop killer. Always go with your gut. I'm telling you. I am telling you now. That's gut feel. Your gut knows. Your gut knows something's sketchy. Your gut knows something's up. You just go with your gut, man. Always go with your gut.
one of the most prolific serial killers in American history. But the crime that the truck stop killer was actually known for was not this kidnapping where this woman survived. It was the kidnapping and murder of a woman named Regina K. Walters. Regina was a young woman who came from a broken home, and at the age of 14, she ran away and began hitchhiking across Texas with her boyfriend. In February of 1990, Rhodes picked up Regina and her boyfriend, who were looking for a ride. Rhodes almost immediately kills Regina's boyfriend and takes Regina captive, and he keeps her chained up in his traveling torture chamber for several years before ultimately killing her as well. After Rhodes was finally arrested by this Arizona police officer on the side of the highway, the investigation searched Rhodes' house, and they found some pictures. This is a picture of Regina K. Walters in the abandoned barn where her body was ultimately found. Immediately after Rhodes took this
Something about this photo doesn't look right to me.
picture, he ended Regina's life.
That explains why, because the goddamn, it's just before she died, but like, that's so weird.
Your shipping manager left to find themselves, leaving you lost. You need to hire.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you.
On September 6, 1992, two moose hunters that were hunting just outside of Denali National Park in Alaska were walking up to a well-known landmark amongst hunters in the area. It was this old school bus that was parked in the middle of nowhere. It was all rusted over and nature had practically overgrown it. And hunters, trappers, and travelers would use this bus as kind of like a center point that you would reference where you're going relative to this particular bus. But when they walked up to it, they saw on the outside of the door that there was a note. Attention possible visitors, SOS, I need your help. I am injured, near death, and too weak to hike out of here. I am all alone. This is not a joke. In the name of God, please remain to save me. I am out collecting berries close by and shall return this evening. Thank you, Chris McCandless. Dated August ? 5 months earlier, in April of 1992, Chris McCandless, the one who wrote that note, had hitchhiked from Carthage, South Dakota to Fairbanks, Alaska. Once there, he hitchhiked...
Damn! That's a long-ass hitchhike. Holy shit! That is a long-ass hitchhike, my friend. That's too long. That's too long of a hitchhike.
Again, with an electrician named Jim Gallion who was making his way out of Fairbanks. Chris introduced himself as Alex and asked Jim if he would take him to Denali National Park, which was about 2 hours away to the south.
Okay, so why do you need to change your name in order to hope to get a ride? That's weird.
West. On the drive, Jim asked Chris what he was going to be doing at the park, because this is like wild Alaska country, and frankly, Chris did not look like a rugged Alaskan outdoorsman. Chris told Jim that he was going to be living off the land for a few months. Jim would later say that he had serious doubts about Chris's ability to survive in the Alaskan bush. As it was, Chris only had a light backpack, did have a rifle, but he really didn't have warm clothes on. He only had 10 pounds of rice. That was the only thing he brought for food. He didn't have a compass.
I have a weird feeling this guy didn't want to just live off the land, if you do, like live off the grid. However, there's another plan to this guy.
He didn't have a map, he didn't have a watch, he just seemed totally ill-equipped for what he was saying he was going to go do. At some point, Jim tried to convince Chris not to go, or to at least postpone, and he even offered, hey, I'll drive you up to Anchorage and I'll buy you equipment. You need the right equipment for what you're going to be doing. Let's go there first. But Chris was stubborn, and so Jim ultimately relented and said okay. He drove him to the park. Before Chris left, Jim actually gave him a pair of warm boots that he had in his truck. He said, here, you can use these more than I can. And Chris thanked him, took his boots, and he was on his way. Although Chris was planning for this extensive hike through Denali National Park all the way to the Bering Sea, but Chris would only make it about 20 miles into his journey before stopping at an old rusted bus just outside of the park. Chris would live in this bus for 16 weeks, and according to his diary, that first week he was there was particularly rough. He was snowed in, he couldn't catch anything to eat, so he's hungry and cold, but shortly thereafter he developed a routine. He was able to hunt successfully for some small game, he found some plants that were good to eat, and by and large his entries made it seem like he was very happy. However,
Alright, so the guy went there, he was able to get some good hunting done, he was able to get what he needed to get done. Everything's going well for him so far.
Last month of diary entries really painted a very different picture. After living in this bus for nearly 3 months, he indicated in his diary that he was kind of sick and tired of living off the land and he was ready to return back to society. So on July 3rd, he packs up his camp and he starts walking back the 20 miles towards where he came into the park in the first place. But when he came into the park 3 months earlier, the river that he was going to need to cross was frozen. And now that he's returning in the summer, it had thawed, and now it's the 75-foot wide raging river that was basically impossible to cross. And so he's trapped on the wrong side of this river. What he didn't know, because he didn't have a compass, he didn't have a map, he didn't know the area well, was there was actually a hand-operated tram that would take you across the river in the summer that was only a mile away from his camp that was labeled on almost every map. In addition, there was a hunting cabin not far from that tram that's also on just about every map of this particular area. That had food, it had clothes, it had bedding. He could have stayed in this hunting cabin until conditions were okay again to make the journey back home. But again, he doesn't have a map, so he doesn't know these things.
This is why you always gotta have a map. Don't try to be like the smart person, try to act like you know the way, and you didn't. Just always bring a map. It's easy to keep. Just bring a map. Because then, any case scenario of this happening, you're good.
Exist. So at some point he turns around and goes back to the bus feeling totally dejected. That night his journal entry just said, "Reined in, river looks impossible, lonely, scared." All of Chris's diary entries following his return to the bus after not being able to cross this river got shorter and bleaker and really painted a picture of a guy that was going downhill. The final entry in Chris's diary just says beautiful blue berries. And then 19 days after his final entry is when those two moose hunters find this bus and see the note, the SOS note, pinned to the outside. The hunters go inside the bus, and there, laying in a sleeping bag, is the body of Christopher McCandless. Although it's not entirely clear how Christopher actually died, the two most common theories are either starvation or perhaps he ingested a poisonous plant seed. The hunters alerted authorities who came
Either or is possible.
out and they launched an investigation, and during this investigation they found Chris's camera. Chris was an avid photographer. He had taken loads of pictures over the course of his stay out in the wild. This is the final picture that he took on his camera. It's evident from Chris's SOS note on his door that he did want to escape. He wanted to leave the wild. But what's also clear is that at the end, he realized he wasn't going to. The note he's holding in his hand says, "I have had a happy life, and thank the Lord, goodbye, and may God bless all." And so he took one last dignified picture of himself before curling up in a sleeping bag and passing away. Let me know what you thought of these stories in the comments section.
See, that is a story. What that one is a story of a person who didn't know their surroundings, went into a surroundings they didn't know, and was unable to walk out and come out of it because they were unknowledged and unaware of what to do in a situation. Like I said, if he would have had a map, as Mr. Ballen said, if he would have had a map, he would have known a place he could have went to get himself out of the situation. But because he chose not to have one, he didn't. But anyways, thank you all for watching this video. Hope you all enjoyed it. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, comment what you think down below. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you for the next one.